Hey everybody, how's it going? This is every movie I've watched on streaming within the past month or so. I don't watch a lot of movies on streaming. It's mostly Blu-rays and DVDs and 4K, but I've seen some good stuff. So, as always, if you've seen any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you like something I didn't, or vice versa. That'd be very interesting to hear what you thought. I'll try to go quickly because there's like 9 movies here, and this blank wall that I've had people comment before, like, "Why is your room so blank?" There's actually a lot of stuff in here you just can't see, but I'll put the thumbnail right there. Okay, so the first movie I watched on Criterion, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't have all the actor names memorized and character names because some of these it's been a little bit of time. Um, and I don't quite remember perhaps where I watched everything, but anyways, on Criterion Channel, I watched 1 Hour Photo. This is a movie from 2002, directed by, and I'm looking at my cheat sheet here, Mark Romanek, and it stars Robin Williams, Connie Nielsen, and Michael Vartan, and Gary Cole. And this is a psychological thriller. I don't know if the term chiller is used widely, but I kind of use that sometimes to describe thrillers that veer slightly into the horror realm, because this movie is definitely a bit scary. This is a movie where Robin Williams plays a character named Cy Parrish. And I always think Parrish, his last name, is a reference to his character in Jumanji. But he works at a one hour photo place at a supermarket, like a CVS, which younger folks probably don't know anything about, but that's how we all used to get our photos done. And he becomes obsessed with this family that he has developed photos for a very long time. And this is a basically your standard sort of stalker story. And I love this movie. I really do. I think it's a great film because it's just it's done very well. Stalker stories are a dime a dozen. Someone getting obsessed with someone, but there's the way the plot unfolds in this movie. It's very thrilling. It's very engaging. It's very creepy at times, and it definitely has like this sort of like the almost like the dangers of this sort of voyeuristic intention or endeavor that this character takes, and things are not always as they seem. And the movie never, by any means, makes you sympathize with Robin Williams' character, but it does pull back the curtain a little bit to give you some insight into like what a broken man would do something like this. So I think Robin Williams, all the acting in here is just fine, but Robin Williams, of course, is a great dramatic actor, but I think when he plays villains, man, he's great because he is just a creepy motherfucker in this movie. He's very creepy. One thing about this film that always strikes me is the cinematography. This was shot on film and looks great. And I think it's a low budget movie. It definitely has that sort of feeling. And I just love the contrast of seeing the family's house with a lot of warm colors and lighting, and then going into the mini mart where he works, and it's so cold and clinical looking. I just like this movie. It's definitely a great watch if you've never seen it. All right, the next movie is a sort of psychological horror thriller film from 2009, directed by Christopher Smith, and that's called Triangle. And this movie is starring Melissa George, who I've only ever seen in Mulholland Drive. She plays the actor Camilla, the blonde woman that they want to put in the film. And this is a British movie. It was never released theatrically in the United States. And all the actors in here, though they're playing American characters clearly, they are all British or Australian. And they do a pretty good job at their accents. It's not really noticeable. Um, this is a great film. It's not a perfect movie, but if you've never seen it and you want sort of like a trippy movie, as I had mentioned, I've been watching a lot of head spinning, like trippy sci fi and horror, and this was one that was recommended, and I really enjoyed it. If you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth watching. It's a unique movie. It basically is about this group of people, some friends, some people meeting for the first time. They go out on a yacht, just go out to the sea just for a day of being on the ocean, and their boat capsizes and they are basically shipwrecked, and they have to board a passing cruise ship, cruise liner, huge ship, and things go south. It's very creepy. There's seemingly nobody on the ship, And I won't say any more because I don't want to spoil any of these movies. The first 40 minutes of this movie play out like a standard slasher movie, and it's actually quite enjoyable, you know. And I thought this was going to be like a cool slasher movie, and I liked it. But at around that point, the movie pulls the rug out from under you, and it just gets very weird and cerebral. And it has a very cool little trick in it, and I really liked it. I can't say anything other than that. It was like, oh damn, that's not what I thought was going to happen in this movie. And you know, at times as it goes on, I'm like, okay, I think this is going to happen. I think this is going to happen. And a couple times, you know, I predicted like where it was going to go. And but once we got to where I correctly predicted it would go, I did not foresee how it would then go from there and continue to constantly pull the rug out from under you. And the thing that really struck me about this movie is I thought it had an excellent ending and an excellent beginning. Just good stuff. So it's not a like magnificent film, but it is totally worth watching if you want a cool, really unique horror thriller sort of movie. Deals with some Greek mythology and things like that. It's just a very well done film. Okay, the next three movies are part of, I would say, a trilogy, or you could say a shared universe, and they're very interesting. I would say these three next three movies are certainly not for everybody. They're a little more esoteric, but if you like weird stuff, definitely worth watching. The first is called Resolution. It's from 2012, and it's by a director duo called Benson and Moorhead. I think it's correct me if I'm wrong, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, I think, or vice versa. But they're a directing writing duo. And this movie stars Peter Salella and Vinnie Curran. And this is a movie about a guy who receives a videotape from his friend who's a crackhead. And the video is of his friend smoking crack in the woods and shooting guns and being psychotic. And he sends him a map link of where he is. He lives in this cabin remotely in the middle of nowhere, basically. And his friend drives out and is determined to basically not let his friend leave this cabin for a week in order to detox him off crack. It's his last ditch effort to help his friend. And as the movie plays out, a lot of strange people start showing up to the cabin. You meet a lot of weird characters, and strange things start happening. The character starts finding, weird movies and things that seemingly are left for them. And it's that kind of movie where you're never quite sure where it's going or what's going on. You're just getting glimpses, and you're kind of right there with the characters where they aren't sure what to make of everything. Um, these three movies can kind of be viewed in any order that you want. They're, like I said, they're in a shared universe, so you'll see a lot of crossover between them. I watched them in order, and to me, that felt like probably the best way to do it, but I do think you could watch them in any order. And I will say that this is clearly their first, like, I could see this as the genesis of what they're trying to do, so I think this one was a little shaky at times. Like, it's actually quite funny. I would at times call this like a horror comedy, because the dialogue between the two main characters in the cabin is really funny, and it's not the greatest acting, but I get the relationship between them, and there's a lot of funny dialogue in here. I mean, really like laugh out loud stuff. But when the movie ends, it ends in such a strange, ambiguous way, and you are left thinking about it a lot. And it can, I mean, it's a little, what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't say a letdown, but it can feel like non-conclusive at times, and really throughout the whole movie. So I gave this one a 3.5. I think it's a good movie. Definitely not for everybody, but it's worth checking out. The next one is The Endless, Benson and Moorhead from 2017. And Benson and Moorhead star as the two main characters. And there are these two characters, brothers, that were in this cult. One of them is vehement that it is a cult, the other not so much. And they go back to this cult for one day to kind of find some closure, some resolution. And you quickly find that there's a lot of weird things going on. And this movie deals with not just the cult, but the people in the surrounding area. And you come to learn how everyone is kind of dealing with the same thing, but they're all dealing with it in their own way. And you get to meet these different characters and how they are going through this sort of shared thing and how they're dealing with it. And of all three, so a little bit of spoilers for the next one, but I like this one the most because it leans so heavily into the cosmic horror realm of seeing you seeing just enough. You know, you never fully see what you want to see. You just get glimpses of things. And from a story structure standpoint and true cosmic horror fashion, it's really about not just themes, but plot wise, things that are borderline unknowable or incomprehensible, that are just so much bigger than you that you can't wrap your head around them. And it has a very unique sort of hook in this movie that I really enjoyed, and you do get some really cool visuals. I thought this one felt much more put together. Certainly a bigger budget than Resolution. Again, not for everybody. It's a movie that is a little bit obtuse at times and requires a lot of thinking. It's a movie that'll leave you thinking a lot when it's over, and you just can't expect solid conclusions. But what I like about this, and I find that I like in a lot of cosmic horror, is again, it never concludes anything, but it's never so obtuse that you have no clue what's going on. It just leaves you little clues here and there for you to think about when the movie is over. So this was totally up my alley, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. The next is the third movie from them, and they have a couple more movies that I'm not aware of the titles, but I know they have a few other movies. This is called Synchronic, which I believe was made for Netflix, though I could be wrong, from 2019, starring Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan. And this is about 2 paramedics that discover that there's this designer drug going around that has some very bizarre sort of reality-altering properties to it. And this main character, Anthony Mackie, decides to get to the bottom of what's going on with this drug. And in true Benson and Moorhead fashion, this movie's very trippy and has some sort of cerebral weirdness going on with it. You know, as having this being the third movie I've seen of theirs and having this sort of shared universe, there's a lot of times watching these where something happens that you've kind of seen before in another movie and you go, oh, aha. You know, there's a lot of little aha moments in here, which is cool. Like, oh, I've seen that before. So that's neat. This one was my least favorite. And I don't know if it's because it was made for Netflix and they had to, I hate to say dumb it down, but it almost feels at times like this one was simplified a bit for general audiences, because their other 2 movies I can't see being like a Netflix produced movie. They're just a little too esoteric and cryptic, I feel, for general audiences. And this movie does start out promising, but it kind of devolves into a pretty standard sci-fi thriller. And to me, that just did nothing for me. I was very let down by this one by the end. And I also thought the acting was not good. Anthony Mackie was fine, but Jamie Dornan, who doesn't have a ton of screen time, I don't know either of these actors, but Jamie Dornan's acting was not great. And there are a few other performances that are distractingly bad in this. You know, in a movie like Resolution, where the acting's not great, but it's a low-budget movie and it certainly has that feel, and there's a lot of humor and a good relationship between the characters, it's passable. But in a movie like this, it doesn't work. So this one, not great. And it really was actually quite disappointing to me. I would give it like 3 stars. I thought it had a unique premise and it started out fine, but it also pulled a lot of cheap shots, and I think it was their weakest one I've seen. Certainly we'll check out their other stuff. I think they're directors to really look out for. But I don't know their career path now or what they're doing now. So yeah. The next 2 movies were comedy dramas, and I quite like both of them. The first is a movie called Bernie from 2013, directed by Richard Linklater, starring Jack Black, Shirley MacLaine, and Matthew McConaughey. I watched this on Criterion Channel, and when I saw it on there, I was like, Bernie's on Criterion Channel? But I can kind of see it. I've seen this movie now about 3 or 4 times, and I really like it. It's not a perfect movie. I don't think everyone loves this movie, but I've always enjoyed this. This is like a dark comedy crime movie about this guy named Bernie who lives in this very small, close-knit Texas town. He's extremely beloved by the community. He's a funeral director. He's active in church. Everyone loves him. And he gets together and forms this sort of relationship with a local older woman who is extremely wealthy and pretty much hated by everyone in the town. Just an incredibly mean, vile woman. And they form this sort of relationship, and something goes south, and there's a sort of crime aspect to this. This movie is based on a true story and is framed as a documentary. So there's a lot of cuts of interviews with the townspeople that you would expect in a documentary, and there's a lot of humor in this. I think that the interviews with the townspeople are great. They're funny to listen to. You know, there's typical small town Texas people. It's very enjoyable. The humor in here is funny. It is quite dark at times. My issues with this movie, I feel like some of the character development is quite rushed, so you kind of just have to suspend your disbelief to like let the movie work. And also, I find in movies that portray themselves as documentaries, they use these talking head interviews to, it's like a thinly veiled way to show exposition, having some of these townsfolk basically, it's just expository dialogue. I'll admit that this movie is flawed, but it's one that I've just always enjoyed. I think it's totally worth a watch. I give it 3.5 stars. Like I said, I've seen it 3 or 4 times. I've enjoyed it every time, and I'll watch it again. Not one I watch every year. Definitely a fun, enjoyable movie, and I think Jack Black gives a good performance in here. The next movie was one that I think is probably quite a popular movie that I've never heard of or seen, and I really liked it. And it's called Sideways from 2004, directed by Alexander Payne and starring Paul Giamatti and Thomas Hayden Church. And I think, what's the actress's name? Virginia Madsen and Sandra Oh. And this is two guys. Paul Giamatti is the friend of Thomas Hayden Church's character who's getting married. So they're kind of like, if you will, like on a bachelor run of Wine County. And Paul Giamatti's character is a writer. He's quite obsessed with wine, and he's a bit of a wine snob. And they're just going through Wine County doing tastings, and they kind of get mixed up with these two women. And it's got this, I think it would be inappropriate to call this a rom-com, though it does have that angle. It's the thing that immediately sucked me into this film was the excellent writing. The script is just great, you know, and it's not so deep and so heavy, though it does deal with some strong, you know, like, I wouldn't say like intense subject matter, but the way that the characters are written, and the theming and the way that these characters have depth to them, which is something that's great to see, characters with a lot of depth, can get dark at times and very dramatic. And I just thought that this movie was enjoyable the whole way through. The acting was great. It was funny. Again, just great scenes, believable acting, slower scenes where you're sitting in a room and it's not jumping all over the place. It's more of a drama than a comedy, but it's a great balance of both. And it looks great. It has great music. It was shot very well, and it's just a very enjoyable movie. I gave this 4 stars. If you haven't seen it, it's like a must watch. Okay, the next 2 movies are A24 films. The first movie, and I think I watched both of these on Max, if I'm not mistaken. Sideways I watched on, I want to say, Hulu. The first A24 movie I saw was called I Saw the TV Glow. This came out this year, as far as I know, and it was directed by Jane Schoenbrunn, if that's how you pronounce their name. And it's starring Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne. This movie was not good. I did not like this. There's a lot of that I did like about it. It's a movie about these 2 younger characters in the 90s who bond over this sort of young adult television show that's very reminiscent of like Twin Peaks and the X-Files, and it's hard to explain. There's a lot of 90s weird pop culture references in here, and they have sort of identity crises, if you will, and they sort of become obsessed with the show and allow it to, in a way, become their personalities. The show is a bit of a security blanket for them. This movie's dealing with a lot of different things. My problem with this is I just felt like there was a lot of issues. I think that there are people that will like this, but the ultimate thing with this is it almost felt like it was marketed wrong, and I feel like that's a problem with A24. They market things in a weird way. Like, it's not really quite a horror movie, but it feels like it's for kids. Like, it feels like it's for teenagers. I think that like teenagers might like this movie, but But then it's like so much of the movie is 90s nostalgia that I don't think that would appeal quite to a younger generation, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not the demographic for this. Um, I felt like the writing in here was very sloppy. It was trying to deal with a few different themes and it never quite latched onto any in a significant way. And I think the script, while it's very creative and what it's trying to do, just gets a bit ridiculous. And overall, I just felt like the whole thing was sloppy. I think a lot of times, this movie has a very surreal, weird tone. It's clearly very inspired by weird 90s pop culture and David Lynch heavily, and too much. It's very obvious what its inspirations are, and it's at times devolves into nostalgia bait. I feel it's so on the nose with references and cameos and things. It just to me just felt like nostalgia bait. The exposition in this was so on the nose that that's one of my biggest pet peeves in filmmaking. Just horribly expository dialogue, and you literally have characters breaking the fourth wall. There are some reasons for that, but overall, it was just a sloppy movie. The other movie made by this director I've seen is called We're All Going to the World Fair, which I thought was terrible. So I'm done with this director, not for me. Okay, the last movie on here is another A24 movie, and this is probably the hardest to recommend movie I've seen all year. This is not for everybody. It's borderline experimental at times. It's certainly an art house movie, but there was something in here that was so beautiful, it just totally moved me. And this is called A Ghost Story from 2017, directed by David Lowery. It is not to be confused with Ghost Story from the 80s, the Peter Straub adaptation, and it stars Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. This is a movie about this couple living in a home, and the husband, Casey Affleck, becomes a ghost that is tied to the house. And when I say ghost, I literally mean a sheet ghost with the eye holes, the traditional children's ghost costume. And this is a movie about grief and loss and acceptance. And so this movie, first off, what I loved about this was that the director was able to take such a goofy image and makes a beautiful drama and makes something that is just so profound with that goofy image. And I thought that the script was beautiful in here. And also with a very low budget. There's some really cool shots in here that were done very creatively. This is the slowest paced movie I think I've ever seen in my life. It is so unbelievably glacially slow. There are definitely some scenes, if you know anything about this, you probably already know, like the infamous scene in here. But the first act of this movie, like the first 30 minutes, are so mind-blowingly slow. There is very little dialogue, and there are scenes that just go on for so long. Now, there's a reason for that. Like, I know Lowery said that they're intentionally slow in order to make you feel uncomfortable, like you're seeing something you shouldn't be seeing. And that is true. There's, despite the fact that it might seem like this is so boring, or like, why is this going on so long? I'm talking like 4.5 minute shots of no dialogue. It's just, I've never seen anything that slow. But the acting chops on display in those scenes is incredible acting. Although I have to be honest, like it does at times feel a bit self-indulgent, and like I didn't even mention, but I Saw the TV Glow at times to me felt like a first pass script or like a passion project or something that didn't quite, that was very personal to the director, that wasn't made in a way that was able to be consumed properly by the audience. And it felt like a short film that really was stretched out to a feature-length film. And so I know that David Lowery was trying to get a movie into Sundance or one of those film festivals, and this one I'm pretty sure was submitted. So at times with those long shots in the beginning, which I'm going to reiterate this constantly, it is so slow. It felt at times like maybe this was slow enough to make it feature length. But I've said my piece about that. I will say that around the 30-minute mark, this movie picks up and the story starts to unfold. Never fast-paced by any means. Casey Affleck as the ghost has no dialogue and moves very slowly, and is often just seen observing in this movie. You know, there are scenes of people living in this house having conversations, and you really just see Casey Affleck in the background as the ghost, just observing. Another movie that I feel was probably marketed incorrectly, because this, you see, even on HBO it said horror, supernatural. This is not a horror movie. This is a drama. There's a romance angle to this, and not like a schlocky romance, a true romance, a true romantic, emotionally filled film. Um, Hard to say what exactly I loved about this. I think that the way the story was weaved around, and little things here and there that you pick up as you pay attention to this movie. You need to pay attention quite a bit in this, and it's a little hard to do with the pacing. But I just found this movie profoundly beautiful. I don't know exactly what it was. It just really hooked its claws in me, and it's a very sad, certainly a tear-jerking film. Like, if you're one to like get emotional and cry at movies, you'll probably bawl your eyes out watching it, because it can be very sad, but it's bittersweet. I found it very pretty and beautiful, and I gave this 4.5 stars. I mean, I know that not everyone loves this movie, but I just found it so beautiful and poignant, and I loved it. And I just really liked this movie, man. I liked it more than The Green Knight, which I know people love, which I also thought was great. But this just did something to me I thought was awesome, and it was completely not at all what I thought it was going to be. One of the best movies I've seen in a long time. If it sounds like something you can handle, and you can get past that 30-minute mark where it gets a little bit faster paced and the story starts to unfold, I think you'll like it. But yeah, definitely at least try it, because it's a wonderful movie. So anyways, that's everything. As I said in the beginning, if you've seen any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've seen anything cool lately, and I'll be back with something else. Maybe some book stuff. I haven't done that in a while. I've read some good books lately. So anyways, I hope everybody's doing well. Peace out, and y'all have a wonderful day.